Hello everybody, my name is Ruby, and today I'm going to talk about Bitwig 6. Now, it has been announced that it is coming out on August 27th. That is pretty much all they've officially confirmed. However, they did put out this cryptic teaser image on their Instagram, and in this video I'm going to talk about some of the speculation that has been done based on this image. And then we're going to talk about some of the issues that I've noticed in the current version of Bitwig that I would like to see addressed in the new version. And at the end, I have kind of a crazy piano roll idea I want to talk about, but is probably not that realistic. So yeah, right off the bat, looking at this image, the first thing that we can see is that there is a change in theme. If we look back here, the background of the arranger is different. It is a lot darker than the normal gray, which a lot of people have been asking for. Now, it is possible that they just changed the default theme. However, with how crazy the community has been going over theming, I think it's pretty likely that it is a full theme editor. Personally, the gray arranger is starting to grow on me a little bit, sort of like the old Ableton 8 and 9 themes did. However, theming in a proper dark mode would be a much appreciated feature. Next up, if we look towards the bottom of the image, we can see that some of the tracks are collapsed while others are expanded. This is currently not possible in Bitwig Studio, and it gets kind of fucking annoying when you are in a huge project file and you're trying to line stuff up and you have to do it by the time marker at the top instead of being able to visually see where the clips are. So this is something that I am very excited for, especially as a former Ableton user. Next, let's talk about these little hook things that seem to be on the corners of some of these clips. Now, my theory, and a lot of people in the community's theory, is that these are some sort of aliased clips, similar to the way that patterns in FL Studio work. What this means is you could basically create one clip and put audio or MIDI information, whatever, into it, and then copy references to that one original clip across your timeline, and then you can edit that original clip and it'll update all of the ones after. This can be very useful for things like placing drums in an audio track, which is something I and many like to do as opposed to MIDI, for reasons I can make a video about later. Next up, another clip related thing is that it looks like there's potentially automation clips coming to Bitwig 6, again similar to the way that FL Studio handles it. As we can see here in the automation lane for this piano recording 1 track, we can see that there are clips in the automation lane with the same shape in both, and they also have that little aliased icon. One of my favorite things about how FL Studio handles its automation is that you can create a specific shape and then place it in specific spots across the timeline and then edit it after the fact, because all of its automation works in aliased clips. This can be a lot more precise than using modulators on a single device. Now, what I really like about what it looks like Bitwig is going to do in Bitwig 6 is a combination of both. In FL Studio, you're forced to use clips everywhere, which means each little difference needs to be its own unique clip with its own baggage attached to it. However, in Bitwig and Ableton so far, there is no aliasing or duplicating. Everything is in a line here. However, it looks like in this next update, you'll be able to do both, which means you can have these aliased clips and then perhaps consolidate them to make variations in specific spots without destroying the original clip. So next up on the list, this one I feel like is a lot more on the speculative side. However, some sort of scale aware or scale notation appears to be in the arranger here. If we look up here at the top of the 6, it looks like the ending of something minor. I'm not entirely sure what this could be. I am imagining in my head it's something similar to how you can add time signature changes up at the top of the arranger, but for different key changes. This could just be for notation for reference and stuff. I don't know if it's actually going to have any functionality beyond just labels in the timeline, but people have been dying for some scale aware features in Bitwig, such as scale highlighting in the piano roll. So maybe this is related to that. Moving on to some of the current issues I have seen with Bitwig, I want to start with an issue that's not mine, but a friend I've met recently who has been unable to use the newer versions of Bitwig. In Bitwig 5.2, they added hardware acceleration to the rendering pipeline of the program. This improves performance in the UI, which is something that I have noticed. The frame rate while using the program and scrolling around and looking at all the visualizers and stuff has noticeably improved. However, there are some fringe cases of people who have graphics cards that aren't playing very nicely with it. I just want to give you guys a quick epilepsy warning. We're about to show some flashing images on the screen. My friend Dwineth has an issue across multiple versions of Bitwig, which results in some pretty gnarly flickering across their screen. This happens both in Direct 3D and OpenGL in Windows, and they've even had it happen using Vulkan on Linux. They have contacted the Bitwig team to ask about it. They have responded by saying that they have no plans for toggleable hardware acceleration. If that is the case, it would be nice to see them clean up the rendering engine a little bit and make it more compatible with other hardware configurations. I myself have noticed a few visual issues around the edges of the window when I am using a popped out plugin window or tabbed into another program on Windows 11. Now, I don't have a lot of problems with Bitwig personally, especially as someone coming from Ableton. However, there are a few nitpicky things that have kind of driven me a little bit crazy since switching. So I'm gonna just rapid fire down my list real quick. Starting off with the interface, particularly in the device panel at the bottom of the screen, I think there's too much padding everywhere. If we look at something like Ableton, you can fit so much on your screen at a time. Whereas in Bitwig, it almost feels claustrophobic because you're running out of space with only a few devices loaded. I wish there was an easier way to edit the values of automation points. I have kind of a huge fucking screen, so anytime I want to put in an exact value for an automation point, I need to move my mouse from one corner or wherever the automation point is all the way to the top left of the screen to enter a value into a text box. I would rather it be something like Ableton where you can just control click the point and type whatever you want. Piggybacking off that, I would like to see actual automation values shown in third-party plugins instead of just vague percentages. Moving on to some device issues, I would like to disable the high pass filter in Polymer, please. The reverb device is kind of ass. This is something that hasn't affected me too much, but I have seen a lot of people bring it up in the Bitwig Discord server, and I can't say I disagree with it. It would be very nice if in the drum machine, you could set a pad in the drum machine to choke to all the other targets instead of having to manually one by one choke it by every single frame. Lastly, I really like the browser. However, I mostly use it in a pop-up window, and I wish when I typed something and it showed me a bunch of results, the things that I have tagged as favorite would show up at the top of the list. That would be very nice. All right, this one's gonna get kind of insane, so sorry if this gets more into rambly territory. I have been talking to a lot of people who are into modular synths or more microtonal music, basically all kinds of music that doesn't revolve around the Western 12-note musical scale. There is a micro-pitch device built into Bitwig that will take the MIDI signal and do some math that's honestly beyond me to convert it into MIDI with MPE pitch information. That way, any synth or any of the built-in Bitwig devices can use that information to create pitches within different tunings. And there are loads of presets for different intervals and things like that. This can create very interesting tonality, however, it's not super flexible. I think it would be really cool if in the piano roll, they made it so that you can create your own intervals and tunings that display in the piano roll. Imagine if instead of using some hacky microtonal device that takes a note like A4 and converts it to some random pitch number with the math built into the device, you can set your own interval and create your own keys in the piano roll. I believe in my idea for this that what it would essentially be doing is running a similar process to what the micro-pitch device does in the background, but letting you label the notes in the piano roll. Because of this, if they are creating a freely moving pitch backend that's snapped into notes in specifically set intervals on the interface, what if we could just completely turn off the snapping on the interface and draw in notes by frequency? Just imagine your piano roll being like 0 to 5,000 hertz, and you can just drag your notes wherever, freely moving across the scales. I think this could be really cool. It would be really fun to play with. However, it might be pretty hard to do, and I feel like it would not get used by very many people. So I totally understand if this is not a thing that they're interested in. So this video is going to be outdated in about 3 or 4 days. So putting all this effort into making it is probably not the smartest idea, but I wanted to get back into the role of making content again. And this is an interesting topic that has been on my mind for a little bit. This is basically my Silk song. So yeah, these are my thoughts on Bitwig 6. I will definitely be covering it more when it comes out, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.